Dujanna is best experienced with no prior knowledge. It leans heavily on exploration, discovery, and experiencing new things. Once these are taken away, I feel a lot of the value is lost, so please give this game a try first before watching this video. Thank you. Dujanna was briefly mentioned in a video I watched about Cruelty Squad. I was immediately interested in it, very obviously for the visuals that looked a lot like the Hylix series, one I'm very fond of. But what I was greeted to instead was a story about the acceptance of death that hides itself under layers of visual wackiness. This game has challenged me in many ways that no other game has done before. It hides its ideas and themes in plain sight, but throws so much at the player it's difficult to articulate these ideas. With this having been said, let's get into the video. Upon booting the game up for the first time, a video will play, stating it's one of many random possible videos, and that we are lucky, since the developer himself is going to tell us the underlying meaning of the game.
Is subverted heroism.
Subversive heroism. I want you, the viewer, to keep this in mind throughout the video. Dujanna opens on a family preparing dinner, when the daughter asks who will die first, her mother or father. The parents give half an answer, saying that they can't possibly know, and there's an audience laugh track making light of the whole conversation. But as if on cue, Ajna's hamster is found dead. Ajna and her father go out to the desert, trying to find a suitable place for Kaya the hamster to rest. After another conversation of heaven and angels, someone finds Ajna and her father.
I'm sorry, have we a problem?
A week has passed with no sign of either of them. Despite fearing the worst has happened, Dujanna decides to try and find them on her own. Armed with a neighbor's oil mining mech and a list of people who she wants to talk to, Dujanna leaves for the desert in search of her family. The people on her list range from positions of power to just a child. One of them is the commander of the occupying military force, or the spider boss of the spider people. There's Amki Hawkins, who's the owner of a power plant and a robot factory, the sisters, who are this group that everyone comes to give their grievances, and lastly a child at play. This can get us some insight into what Dujanna's daughter might be doing or thinking. These people of interest are what drives us from location to location. There are a total of 5 to 6 areas to visit depending on how you view it. The Oasis Desert, the Militarized Zone, the Spider People's Cave, the Power Factory, and the 2 Towns. Each of these zones are chock full of weird interactions, ranging in a variety of tone. For instance, the town of Bausapez has this line of people waiting to see what I believe is the likeness of Muhammad in a plate of scrambled eggs. The people in line will argue over it, some saying that they saw him in the plate, some saying they didn't, and of course others are just arguing it's blasphemous to even debate over it. While all that goofiness is happening outside, you enter into another house and a man talks about how his support dog helps him, and he fears what will happen when his dog eventually dies of old age. That tone shift can be found everywhere, some places being really light, joking about poop, then you can walk into a building and... The game also isn't above the nonsensical. Much like Hylix, sometimes you'll just get teleported to what seems to be a new dimension. It's easy to get lost in Dujanna, not so much in the literal sense, the game isn't some kind of maze, but each of these rooms can feature a completely new and interesting topic that will derail whatever you were originally trying to do. Like when I was searching for the sisters, I found a woman in a classroom. We then got involved in a 4-minute conversation over how human nature is to find what someone is longing for, how an audience will seek entertainment even at the expense of the creator, how this woman is still searching for romance despite already being happily engaged, and while she may not act on those feelings, her desires still persist. Visiting each area will give us insight into the whereabouts of Dujanna's family, the world, or how Dujanna is feeling. Our brief conversation with Colonel Dajjal shows off the tension between the occupying military force and the residents. From the first moment of conversation, Dajjal is fairly blunt and hostile to what is essentially a woman who is just missing her family. Light questioning results in Dajjal thinking Dujanah is accusing him. Dajjal threatens us and we walk away from the conversation. After this, we can visit the sisters in town. They ask us to click a series of buttons, and in exchange they'll help us deal with the military. While searching for that room full of buttons I'm supposed to click, we find a child who doesn't want to talk. Instead, he expresses himself through play. Interacting with him starts a play about a lonely average man who falls in love with a witch, only for the witch to disappear. He would go on to spend weeks chasing after a tear and the witch's voice, only to find a lake of tears made by the witch, and finally finding peace. On conclusion of the play, the child will have felt better. We find the button room, press the buttons in the order they wanted us to, and with the help of the sisters, we go on a killing spree in the military base. Of course, none of this happened. It was just a fantasy. The sisters tell us it's okay to live in that fantasy, but to seek revenge would only cause more violence. Though they do not offer us that revenge, they do offer to comfort Dujanah if she needs them. We go to the Spider-Man cave next. As unpleasant as they are, they don't try stopping us. We meet the gross wolf spider, Amnir, and Amnir knows what's happened. He quotes one of Ashna's lines from the beginning of the game. He offers information in exchange for arcade tokens. Yes, our arcade tokens. Without much choice, Dujanah plays the games at the arcade. There's a total of 6 arcade games to play. All of them play differently and range in genres. Cities of the Doom is a lot like Space Invaders, but when your cities slowly get destroyed, this military caricature will yell stuff like, "We're all gonna die." I found this funny, but your mileage may vary. Pupek Loves It All is the shortest game of the bunch and is closest to a walking simulator. There's some stuff to explore, and the game is just mostly full of jokes and some weird imagery. The Caves of Al Dajjal is a Metroidvania that was designed to be as annoyingly hard and as long as possible. It's the most complete game of the bunch, but it really fights you on every step of the way. Pie or Anus, yes that's right, Pie or Anus, is a game where an image slowly develops and you must guess if it's a pie or an anus.
Pie or anus? So, just to confirm, you've never seen this man before? No. You've never seen this man before, have you? Just to confirm to our studio audience, you've never seen this man before.
Armadillo is a shooter, and it's a fairly simple one. You go from level to level shooting zombies and turrets and flipping 4 switches in order to activate a teleporter to go to the next floor. I will say though, the songs in this game in particular are really good. The last game is Turbo Track Ultra Race. It's a racing game where you never race against anyone else. You are also told that your husband and daughter are right ahead of you, but you never get to see them, and instead you just get an arcade token. Completing this game will also change the music in the arcade, making the scene kind of feel like a real gut punch. I'm not gonna lie, about halfway through the arcade section, I experienced some burnout, so I checked out the last person of interest, MQ Hutchins. The power plant is one of the stranger areas in the game. Everything has been mostly grounded in an Islamic country. Even the otherworldly scenes still appear to be in the desert. But the power plant turns into a glitchy robotic nightmare. And here there are robots that are made to understand what death is, then instructed to kill themselves. All in order to have a better understanding of what happens during the process of death. You meet Hutchins after walking through tons of wires, and he has a short but intriguing speech about the process of death and non-dual consciousness. This is a state in which you aren't just you are the universe. You will lose yourself, or more so your individuality, a scary thought for most, but one that's described as being peaceful. Going back to the arcade, I complete the games, get the tokens, and return to the spider boss. In exchange for the tokens, the spider boss gives us directions to our family, and hints at what Dujanah has been dreading from the very beginning. Going back to the Oasis Desert, where it all started, we follow a long and convoluted trail to this post, and underneath it, we find bones. We snap to the funeral being held for Dujanna's family. After a blessing of their spirits, Dujanna gives a speech, stating that the love they all fostered and once carried must be borne by herself alone. She laments the time she could no longer spend with her family, cursing the sky, sun, and skin. She claims the world was a cruel setup. Walking away from the burial site, the world slowly zooms out, revealing the countless graves, making the viewer wonder how many men and women would have to suffer through similar fates that Dujanna was just facing. More so than any video I've written before, this one has been the most difficult, but I believe this is a byproduct to the way the game was designed. While the video was structured in a way that presented the game as a straight narrative, it's far from that. The way that the game was structured allows for the player to explore these points of interest at their own pace. This means you could experience any of these places of interest in any matter of ways. This could result in the player feeling that the story played out in a different way, or they just miss out on content altogether. In multiple interviews, Jack Spooner stated he wanted the game to feel more like a collage of ideas and wanted people to come away with their own interpretations. To give more substance to his idea, events are sometimes randomized. For example, the way Dujanna's husband and daughter die can either be from a drone strike, or they can be attacked by the spider people. The player may feel anger alongside Dujanna when she wants revenge towards the military, or they could just feel sick to their stomach for bargaining with the very people who killed their family. But I think out of all these, the one that supports Jack's idea and is the strongest of these randomized events is when you boot up the game for the first time. Jack wasn't wrong when he said you got a randomized video, but he was deceiving you maybe just a little when he told you the underlying meaning was subverted heroism. There are more versions of this exact clip. When I re-downloaded the game on my laptop, I got the same clip, but it told me the meaning of the game was catharsis.
Aye, catharsis.
This was done intentionally in order to shape the way the player viewed the game, prompting you to come away with different interpretations. So while you may play this game later and have different thoughts about what it was trying to say, I want to outline what I took away from my playthroughs. Death is the theme that's most prominent throughout the game. It's the catalyst that starts the journey, it's the topic that routinely gets brought up, and most importantly, the acceptance of death was the main lesson I took away. The child's play teaches us to find joy in what is left behind. The sisters offer comfort instead of seeking more death. Hutchins provides a way to look at death spiritually. Not only is it peaceful, but allows you to remove yourself from the burden, as you are essentially just part of the universe and what happened to you was just circumstance. Even the spider boss can relate to Dujanna, hoping she will find peace when she finds the bones. Her end speech encompasses a lot of these lessons. She appreciates the love her husband and child helped foster, but feels the pain of having to carry it on her own. There are many other themes that the game explores. For example, consciousness is brought up multiple times. There's an 8 to 10 minute audio clip that can be found in this house.
Problem, which is that consciousness depends on brain states, on what goes on in our nervous system.
Jack interviews a scientist about the idea that decisions are made before it even reaches your consciousness. This idea can free someone of blaming themselves for past decisions, as it feels as though they were never really given a chance to mull it over. This doubles into the idea of dual consciousness that Hutchins talks about, since if you aren't really making decisions, then it's a lot like the universe is just deciding life for you. While that might be scary, since, of course, like I said earlier, you lose your individuality, it comes with its own type of peace, since nothing is really your fault. The 5 stages of grief can be found during the game. Denial is our call to action. Dujanna deep down knows her family is gone, but still seeks out the truth. Anger can be seen in both the gallery scene, where she mulls over previous bad memories of her husband, and the revenge fantasy towards the military. Bargaining is when we trade tokens to the spider people in exchange for the whereabouts of our family. Depression, specifically for the loss of her daughter, can be seen in the clinic with the pregnant women. I feel it's fairly telling that this room arguably has the most painful music in the game. And lastly, acceptance, which is given to us from both Hutchins and this tiny bit at the end of her speech. While I can't put an exact finger on it, Dujanna does put an emphasis on motherhood. The clinic with the pregnant women is the obvious choice. A song called Mothers Were All Darlings plays in the background. This room is probably one of the most emotionally charged in the game. Despite this being a place that would normally be celebrated in a positive light, all we can feel is pain for Dujanah, as it's just another reminder of the daughter she lost. The spider boss will sympathize with Dujanah. He partially understands the pain she is going through. He too once had to have had a mother. At multiple points in the game, Dujanah will attempt to comfort a child, that being the one giving a play and the child that was in Hachin's factory. And while I don't know how this would be a reference to motherhood, but the vast amount of NPCs are women, it ends up feeling ironic that those who give life seem to be the only ones left to live it. Dujanah's art style is what will likely pull people in. The clay models are fun and can be expressive. The spider people in particular have a lot of fast twitching movements. The oil drilling mech might be my favorite design in the game. It looks like an action figure, and I found the sound effects just a joy. This game has been compared a lot to Hylix, but I think that's unfair to both products. Hylix has a focus on stop-motion animations, and the game features a lot of strange designs and generals. Look at the twisting wall, this is not normal structure. Dujanah's world is certainly strange, and there are a lot of weird interactions and dimensions you can slip into, but its art style is grounded. You can tell this is supposed to be modeled after an Islamic country. Yes, the spider people look strange, but given the prior context, you can tell they are a metaphor for a religious group, as they are converting men into spiders. The game also doesn't entirely rely on clay animation. There are several live action bits where Jack plays a character. These sections are usually played up as a joke, like him making fun of Let's Players, or him just having fun, like with his show host character in the arcade game Pyranus. There are a few instances where he mixes this media together. 2D animation can be placed on top of the clay, or splicing a little bit of that live action into the clay. It's really cool. To say the least, Dujanah is a visual treat to look at, and it helps keep the player craving more as they try to piece the story together. And Dujanah wants you to randomly explore. There are a ton of hidden secrets that require you to search every nook and cranny. Each building and room will have something weird or interesting to read and listen to. It varies in tone, and usually no building that's neighboring one another will ever feature similar topics. I think this is what helps Jack's idea of his game being a collage of ideas. These buildings feature different topics, so at one moment I'm thinking about consciousness, and the next I'm sad about this man's limited time with his therapy dog. Like I said a little bit earlier ago, there are several rooms in the game that deal with ideas of consciousness, but they are spread out into multiple locations, forcing you to have to piece together the topic by yourself. All the game's themes and ideas stick in your head, but new rooms will explore entirely different topics, making me feel like I had ADHD. This is a wonderful way of keeping the player's attention, since everything feels new, but I feel it does muddy up a lot of its themes and lessons the game was trying to present. Don't get me wrong, I still find this structuring system fun, but I do think it's the main reason I have struggled to write this video. I've mentioned this before in other videos, but I am no expert or even a novice when it comes to music. That being said, I think Dujanah's has a lot of powerful tracks. Do a Big Step Like That is played in Hachin's factory after you find the child. It's a strangely uplifting song, but sounds kinda sad. It made me feel like I did something good, despite the dark setting the factory is based in. In a similar light, the song Sadness will change the tone of the Oasis Desert. It was originally more of a bustling kind of everyday song, but now it's really depressing, and this only occurs after you get the directions to find your family. My personal favorite song is Caves of Trash and Sarah. The song is used in the Spider People's Cave, and I would kick myself if I didn't mention Mothers Were All Darlings as the standout track in the game. When mixed with the clinic's visuals, the track routinely pops up in my mind whenever I think about Dujanah. Dujanah will be compared a lot to artsy games like Hylix, but I think the game does a lot more than just being quirky. It's a game that intellectually engaged me. It made me think about some topics I was uncomfortable with. It was also just an absolute joy to play, and I can honestly say I never knew what was going to be around the corner. Jack Spooner somehow made me have a blast while also being sad. A task that doesn't make too much sense, but was enjoyable either way. I highly recommend you try Dujanna, and you can pick that up on either itch.io or Steam. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a good day.